is a wound beneath your sensitivity, and it is not merely the wound of another. It is your own echo, long buried in the vault of the unconscious, which speaks through your tenderness. The empath, whom the world romanticizes as one who feels deeply, is in truth not merely a vessel for compassion, but often the child that was never seen, never heard, never held. The one who survived not by being, but by becoming what others needed. And thus the tragedy begins not in adulthood, but in the hidden alleys of childhood, where the soul of the child was asked to become invisible. You see, the empathic disposition is not born whole. It is born fragmented. It is forged in silence. It arises from the child who intuitively understood that peace could only exist if they could absorb the chaos around them. This is not a gift. It is a response to a world where the child's own needs were too dangerous to voice, too heavy for the parental psyche to bear, or too disruptive to the emotional equilibrium of the home. So the child vanished not in body, but in self. What remained was a caretaker, a mirror, a balm. That is why so many empaths confuse love with absorption. They confuse connection with merging. They fall into others, not because they desire union, but because they fear the loneliness of their original abandonment. The unconscious narrative reads, if I can feel you, if I can fix you, if I can carry you, then perhaps you will not leave me. This, my dear friends, is not love. It is the cry of a forgotten child echoing through the corridors of adult life. Now, what is most harrowing is not that this pattern exists, but that it lives in shadow. The empath is celebrated by society, praised for being generous, adulthood, nurturing. But beneath that praise lies a forgotten grave, one in which the self was buried. The persona of the helper, the archetype of the healer, becomes a mask so complete that even the empath forgets that it is not who they truly are, but who they needed to become. Do you understand what I am saying? We do not wear these masks maliciously. We wear them to survive, but make no mistake, every mask is a suppression of truth. And the truth is this, the empath is often an abandoned inner child who was trained to feel others because no one ever felt them, to love others because no one ever loved them in their own language, to hold space for others' darkness because their own darkness was never permitted to exist. This repression gives birth to a peculiar psychic wound, a wound that bleeds in secret, yet seeks constant soothing through enmeshment. When an empath says, I feel too much, what they often mean is, I cannot find the boundary between where you end and I begin. But that is not sensitivity. That is a lack of psychological skin, a developmental scar from having to fuse with others in order to matter. Let us look deeper. In the unconscious, every unprocessed trauma becomes a living entity. The empath's gift, if we may call it that, is not a result of mystical superiority, but of complex trauma stored in the body and psyche. They became hyper-attuned to micro-shifts in emotion because they had to, when the parent was angry, they learned to detect it. Before the voice changed, when the caregiver withdrew, they adapted instantly. This is vigilance, masquerading as love. It is fear transfigured into virtue. but all of it, absolutely all of it, is survival. So what becomes of the empath as they grow? They are drawn to pain like moths to flame, not because they are masochists, but because pain is familiar, because healing others resembles the reparative fantasy of healing their parent, their sibling, their chaotic home. But you cannot fix the past by replicating it. The archetype of the wounded healer, while powerful, is a trap. If it becomes your only identity, you cannot live forever in the wound. Eventually, you must heal, but herein lies the paradox. In order to heal, the empaths must first feel their own pain, not the pain of others, but their own exiled sorrow. And this is the scariest task of all, because to feel your own pain is to acknowledge that no one came for you, that all those years of giving were secretly attempts to be chosen, to be seen, that you were the abandoned one, not just the helper. And this realization shakes the very foundation of the identity you have built. Do you see the complexity? The empath's compassion is often a well with no bottom. They give and give, but they cannot receive. Why? Because to receive would mean vulnerability. And to be vulnerable is to risk being the child again, helpless, dependent, exposed. It is easier to rescue than to be rescued. Easier to love than to be loved. Easier to disappear into someone else than to be asked, what do you need? And so the pattern repeats. The empath finds themselves drained, burnt out, confused. They attract those who take, not because they are weak, but because they do not believe they are allowed to want. They are not victims of fate, but prisoners of their own unconscious contracts that were signed in childhood with invisible ink. If I carry the pain, perhaps I will be worthy. But let us not condemn, let us not pathologize the empath. No, for within this archetype lies a sacred alchemy. The very same sensitivity that once served survival can be transmuted into intuition, wisdom, healing, but only if the empath chooses to individuate, to step out of the shadow of the inner child and into the full light of selfhood. This is not the path of comfort. It is the path of truth. And what is this truth? It is the reclamation of boundaries, of voice, of need, of desire. It is a moment when the empath says, I will not feel for you anymore, I will feel for myself. Not out of cruelty, but out of wholeness, not out of rebellion, but out of love, true love. Love that flows from an integrated self, not a fragmented one. Love that does not merge, but connects. That does not absorb, but reflects. But how? You ask, how does one begin this transformation? The answer, as always, lies in shadow work, in facing the forgotten inner child and allowing them to speak, in grieving the years you were not held, in mourning the identity that kept you safe, in entering the dreamscape where your soul shows you again and again the face you abandoned. In my years of working with the unconscious, I have seen the empath archetype emerge again and again in dreams as the child holding a lantern in the dark. They are always searching not for someone else, but for themselves, for the moment they were left behind, for the split that birthed their fragmentation. And when they finally find that child and hold them not with pity, but with reverence, something astonishing happens. They become whole. The energy that once went outward begins to return inward. The empath no longer needs to rescue because they have rescued themselves, no longer needs to feel others to survive, because they now feel their own pulse. They are no longer addicted to emotional intensity, because peace no longer feels foreign. And most importantly, they begin to choose relationships that nourish rather than deplete, because finally they believe they are worthy of being chosen. And so, dear listener, I offer you this invitation. Go into the cave of your psyche. Do not go with blame or bitterness. Go with a lantern. Go to find the child who still waits, the one who whispered, "Will someone see me?" and be that someone. Hold them. Tell them it was not their fault, that their feelings mattered, that their pain was real. And then watch as your empathy transforms from a survival strategy into a sacred gift. A gift rooted not in abandonment, but in authenticity. The forgotten inner child does not wish to dominate your life. They only want to be remembered, to be brought back into the fold of your being. And when you do, the empath no longer walks the earth as a wounded ghost, but as a luminous soul, one who feels, yes, but no longer bleeds for others to exist. But it is not so simple, is it? For when we approach that forgotten child, there is fear. Not the fear of monsters, but the fear of remembering. Because to remember is to feel, and to feel is to risk crumbling under the weight of what was once unbearable. Many of you, yes, many have developed sophisticated defense mechanisms. You intellectualize your emotions, you become healers, mystics, psychologists. You surround yourself with books, with rituals, with causes, but none of these can replace what was missing, the primal, unfiltered presence of being loved as you are. Let me speak now of the dreams. The unconscious always tells the truth, even when the conscious mind is lost in performance. In your dreams, you may see yourself walking through endless corridors, searching for a door you cannot find, or perhaps you find a child crying in a house that is crumbling, or maybe you see yourself trying to speak, but your voice will not come out. These are not random images. They are symbols of the psychic truth. You cannot yet articulate. The child in the dream is not a stranger, it is you. The house is your inner architecture. The silence is the emotional suppression you normalized. And the corridors, my dear friend, are the labyrinth of your adaptive identity. When you dream of rescuing someone, pay attention. Are you rescuing a child? Are you protecting someone too fragile to survive? That is your inner child begging to be reparented. Your empathy for others is a disguise for the rescue mission. Your soul is still on. In analytic psychology, we understand that no healing occurs without confrontation. The confrontation with the shadow is a sacred right. For the empath, the shadow is not anger or cruelty. It is need, it is desire, it is selfishness. It is rage. You fear these parts because you were taught they make you unlovable, and so you split them off, denying them, hiding them behind kindness and spiritual bypassing. But the denied self always returns through resentment, through exhaustion, through relationships that mirror your unacknowledged pain. I tell you, until you can sit with your rage, you cannot know peace. Until you can admit your need, you cannot receive love. Until you allow yourself to be seen in your darkness, you will never believe that anyone truly loves your light. You will keep giving and giving, hoping someone will see through the mask and choose you anyway. But how can they, when you have never chosen yourself? Do not mistake your fatigue for failure. The empath's exhaustion is the soul's cry for rebirth. You have carried too much for too long. You are not meant to be a vessel for the world's pain without being filled yourself. You are not meant to bleed as proof of love. You are not meant to live as a reflection of others. The individuation process, the sacred path to wholeness, requires that you reclaim your own face, not the face of the caretaker, not the face of the spiritual guide, but your true face flawed, a beautiful, contradictory, complete. And what is the cost of refusing this journey? It is chronic disappointment, emotional codependency, cycles of betrayal that feel fated but are in fact chosen by the unconscious compulsion to reenact the original abandonment until the wound is made conscious. It runs your life until the forgotten child is heard. The adult remains incomplete until you mourn the love you never received. You will chase it in the faces of those who cannot give it. Now, let me tell you a secret. The forgotten inner child is not only wounded, they are also wise. Their pain holds your creativity, your wonder, your capacity for awe. They are not merely a victim, they are a guide. They are the archetypal innocent, the one who remembers what you were before you became what the world demanded. And they do not speak in language, they speak in tears, in shivers, in sudden nostalgia, in the aching beauty of music that you cannot explain. They speak in the longing that catches you off guard, in the tenderness that makes you weep for no reason. That is their voice. And they are trying to come home, but you must make room for them. Not as a project, not as an exercise in healing, but as an act of love. You must speak aloud what you were never allowed to say. I was hurt. I was afraid. I needed more. These words are sacred invocations. They summon the lost parts of your soul back into presence. They shatter the illusion that strength means silence, that wholeness means perfection, that love means losing yourself. To reclaim the inner child is to dismantle the false identity of the empath. It is to realize that your sensitivity is not a performance, but a perception that you do not need to save anyone to be worthy. That your presence is enough, not because it heals others, but because it includes all of you, even the parts you were told to hide. And when you arrive at this place of inner reunion, something miraculous begins. Your relationships change. You stop choosing those who drain you. You stop apologizing for needing rest. You stop trying to earn love and start receiving it, not because others change, but because your frequency does The signal you send out is no longer, I will carry your pain if you stay. It is, I will meet you in mutuality, or I will walk alone in peace. This is not abandonment. This is liberation. And yet, many of you will resist this path. Why? Because the role of the empath is seductive. It gives you identity. It gives you praise. It gives you the illusion of purpose. But purpose born of pain is not destiny. It is bondage. And so the final task, the great task, is this: to let the identity die, to bury the mask, to grieve the years you spent pretending to be strong when you were actually afraid, to lay down the role of the rescuer and rise as the resurrected self. This is the crucifixion of the false self. The ego does not go quietly. It will cling, it will bargain, it will whisper. But who will you be if you stop helping? Who will love you if you stop giving? And you must answer, I will love me. That is the only answer that matters. That is the moment you are no longer an echo of others, but the voice of your own soul. And when that voice speaks, it does not scream, it does not plead, it simply is. It is the voice of the child who was forgotten and is now found. It is the voice of the adult who no longer fears being alone. It is the voice of the self, not perfect, not painless, but whole. Will you dare to listen? To listen to that voice is to break an ancient spell, a spell cast not by witches or dark forces, but by generational silence. You were taught not to need. You were taught that to be good is to give, to endure, to smile through the ache. But what if I told you that your longing, your ache is sacred, that it was never meant to be silenced, but sung? That inside your longing is the map back to yourself. The child you once were is not buried under ruins. They are waiting beneath your performance. And this child is not weak. Oh no, they are wild. They are untamed. They are the original flame before it was contained into the persona. And when you meet them, not as a therapist, not as a savior, but as yourself, you will feel a tremble in your bones. It is the tremble of truth, of memory, of return. You must understand, the empath's deepest pain is not what they feel from others, it is what they do not feel from themselves. They are attuned to every tremor in another's voice, yet deaf to their own internal scream. They will hold another in anguish, yet never cradle their own fear. They will whisper, you are safe to the world, but have never known safety within. And so I tell you this, there is no enlightenment without inner reparenting. You may speak of chakras and constellations, of soul missions and synchronicities, but if you have not sat with the part of you that still flinches at kindness, you have not begun. Healing is not a concept, it is a descent, a holy plunge into the muck of your own neglected self. That descent is terrifying, yes, but do not flee it, for only in the darkness do you find what the light has obscured. You must go down to go through. You must grieve the absence before you can embody the presence. And this grief, it is not depression, not disorder. It is truth metabolizing. It is the psyche unclenching. I have seen it many times. The moment when the empath, exhausted from saving, finally collapses, they stop running. They stop fixing, and for the first time, they feel empty, not because they're broken, but because the performance has ended. This is the sacred void, the alchemical silence, the place between stories. And here, something extraordinary happens. A dream, a memory, a color, a scent, a long-lost song. These symbols emerge from the unconscious not to entertain you, but to guide you. The unconscious does not heal through logic. It heals through symbol, archetype, image. It speaks in the language of the soul. And it has been speaking to you your whole life. Have you noticed the child in your dreams? Always watching from the corner. Have you felt the pull toward certain songs or stories from childhood that make you cry, and you don't know why? Have you found yourself angry when someone offers you kindness because it feels so unfamiliar that it burns? This is a child waking up. They are knocking not to disrupt your life, but to return you to it. And once they return, so much changes. The empath's boundaries, once porous, become sacred, not because they learn techniques, but because they now feel they are worth protecting. The people who once felt like gravity drawing them into emotional labor suddenly lose their pull, not because the empath has hardened, but because they are no longer unconsciously seeking a parent in every lover, a home in every stranger. This is what it means to be free. Not numb, not armored, but sovereign. And with sovereignty comes something you may not expect: joy. Yes, joy. Not the ecstatic kind, but the quiet kind. The joy of drinking tea without rushing, the joy of saying no without guilt, the joy of walking away without needing to explain, the joy of watching someone suffer and saying, I love you, but I cannot carry this for you. This is not coldness, this is truth. And truth is the greatest act of love. I want to speak now of projection, because it is here that many empaths get lost. They believe they are loving when they are actually projecting. They see a wounded child in another and believe they are seeing clearly, but often they are seeing their own wound reflected back, and in trying to heal the other, they are really trying to rescue the self. They abandoned. This is a great trap of spiritual empathy. It becomes a mirror maze. You think you are helping others, but you are reliving your trauma through them. You think you are channeling compassion, but you are channeling your own unmet longing. You think you are here to save, but you are here to awaken. To awaken is to break the spell of projection, to stop asking, how do I fix them? And start asking, why do I need to notice that your triggers are not flaws, but signposts, to realize that your attraction to the wounded is not destiny, but repetition, to finally look in the mirror and say, I am not what happened to me, I am what I choose to become now. That choice is terrifying. For if you are no longer the empath, who are you? This is the void again. The holy rupture, the death of the false self, and in that death, you may feel lost, empty, You may long for the comfort of old roles. You may feel tempted to fall into another rescue, another romantic redemption story, another spiritual performance. But wait, stay, do not run, let the old identity die. Let the child bury their mask, and when you rise, you will not be what the world needs. You will be what you were always meant to be. Whole, to be whole is not to be perfect. It is to be integrated, to allow every voice within you a place at the table, not just the tender one, not just the spiritual one, not just the helper, but also the angry one, the grieving one, the selfish one, the one who wanted more and never dared ask. Integration does not mean silence of the shadow. It means embracing the shadow and allowing it to transform. And how the inner child longs to be held by your adult self. Not coddled or pitied, but honored. Honored as the keeper of your original blueprint, the part of you that knew love before it was conditioned, that knew presence before it was fractured. This child, this forgotten empathic child, was never meant to disappear. They were meant to evolve, but because they were denied, they remained frozen in the psyche, shaping your relationships, your behaviors, your compulsions. And you, yes, even now, may still be living from their unmet need, from their unspoken prayer, please don't leave me again. But you are not a child anymore. You are the one who chooses now, and with that choice comes responsibility not to others, but to yourself, to the soul contract you were born with, not the ones you unconsciously signed to earn love. It is time to remember that love is not earned, it is received. And only when you offer that love inward can it begin to flow outward in truth, not obligation. I have often said that the unconscious becomes fate when ignored. And so too with the empath. If you do not meet your forgotten self, you will seek them in every broken person. You try to fix, you will try to earn what was never freely given. You will perform love, not live it. And the tragedy will repeat, not because you are cursed, but because you are called to remember. This is the calling of the empath, not to disappear into others, but to reappear to themselves, not to be a balm for every wound, but to become the living truth of their own story, not to dissolve into every pain they sense, but to carry their own pain with sacred dignity. So they are no longer afraid of the dark, and yes, the darkness will remain. The world will still bleed, but now you will no longer see pain as your responsibility. You will see it as part of the dance of life, and you will meet it with compassion, not consumption. You will be with suffering without being consumed by it. This is the difference between the wounded empath and the awakened soul. The wounded empath merges, the awakened soul mirrors. The wounded empath absorbs. The awakened soul reflects. The wounded empath loses themselves. The awakened soul finds themselves again and again. And so we come to the final truth, that the forgotten child within you was never the problem. The problem was that you tried to erase them, but they are still here, still holding the original spark of your becoming, still believing in magic, in softness, in connection. And if you listen, truly listen, you will hear them whisper Thank you for coming back for me. And perhaps you will sit with them not as a stranger, but as a returned sovereign. You will hold them. You will promise never to leave. You will stop abandoning yourself every time someone else needs something. You will stop apologizing for existing, and you will begin to live not from reaction, but from essence. There is no greater liberation than this, to be with yourself fully, to stop being the echo and become the voice, to stop performing empathy and start embodying authenticity, to stop seeking home in others and become your own sanctuary. So now I ask you, can you dare to let the empath archetype die, not the beauty of it, but the bondage? Can you release the need to be understood, to be good, to be indispensable? Can you instead walk barefoot into your own truth, your own shadow, your own radiance? This is the great initiation. The moment the empath becomes sovereign, the moment the child is no longer forgotten, the moment you say, I no longer exist to carry your pain, because I have finally remembered my own, and in that remembering, you become whole, not perfect, a whole that is enough. You are enough. You were always enough, and now you are free.